The following public affairs presentation is produced exclusively for the Cox Channel. And now, the verdict.
Welcome. I'm Kent Myers. Mick Cornett's once again not here, but I am confident that I can tell you he will be back. Win, lose, or draw, he will be back joining us on the verdict soon. I know you'll be glad to have him, as will I. This Sunday morning, we're going to meet the new U.S. Attorney in the Western District of Oklahoma, John Richter. Robert McCampbell, the former U.S. Attorney, has resigned, and I'm proud to say he's a partner of mine now. In fact, we office right next door to each other. And his successor is John Richter. John comes to us with a very fine background and much responsibility in his office, and he's here to talk to you about that this morning. It is interesting what the U.S. Attorney does, how much activity they have in this district, some of which you hear about, some of which you do not. I think you'll find this visit with John interesting and enlightening. Hope you will. And of course, if you want to send us information about questions you'd like to have John answer for you, just let me know. I'll give you the website at the end. So let's go ahead and take a break. Then when we come back, we'll be visiting with John Richter, the new United States Attorney for the Western District of Oklahoma. You're watching The Verdict.
At Chesapeake Energy, here's a few of our favorite Hornets. Alexis likes reading. Sam enjoys history. Alec loves math. Chesapeake is proud to support both the Oklahoma City NBA Hornets and the Young Hornets at Horace Mann Elementary, where over 150 Chesapeake employees mentor to children each week. The students gain a lot from the experience, but not as much as we do. Chesapeake Energy, committed to building a better Oklahoma.
Come on, baby, come on, baby.
Go!
Satellite go out again?
Yeah, rained. But this is just as fun.
Don't live in satellite denial. Get the reliability you expect from Cox, your friend in the digital age.
¿Eres tú?
There you go. Cox Communications está buscando empleados entusiásticos y motivados.
Disfruta de nuestros beneficios, pago competitivo, grandes ventajas y oportunidades para el adelante.
Si desea hacer una diferencia,
tenemos un lugar para usted aquí con Cox Communications.
Visítanos en la internet o llame para ver qué oportunidades tenemos para usted aquí en Cox.
¿Eres tú?
Cox Communications está orgulloso de ofrecer igualdad de empleos.
Welcome to The Verdict. I'm Kent Myers, and to my right is John Richter, the new United States Attorney for the Western District of Oklahoma. John is a Georgia native, did his undergraduate work at Emory University, his law work at the University of Virginia, has spent time in private practice as well as in Washington with the Department of Justice and in Oklahoma City. He, since September 2005, has been the United States Attorney for the Western District of Oklahoma. This is his first visit to The Verdict, but we certainly hope it is not his last. John, welcome.
Well, thanks for having me.
We're glad you're here. Tell us about your legal career. Grew up in Georgia, went to UVA Law School. How'd you get to Oklahoma?
Well, when I finished law school, I clerked for a federal judge in Atlanta, and it was at that time that I really got it shaped a lot of my interests in terms of becoming a federal prosecutor and heading in the direction that I've gone. After a number of years as a clerk and then in private practice in Atlanta, I then had an opportunity to become a state and then federal prosecutor in Atlanta. And in the meantime, probably the most important event in my life happened. I married, and my wife, who was also a very good lawyer in her own right, had the desire to teach law. And she had the opportunity to come and teach at the University of Oklahoma College of Law. And I agreed to tag along, and the rest is history.
So your wife, Lisa, is teaching at the University of Oklahoma. And
Yes,
teaches
sir.
in what area?
She teaches in evidence and torts primarily, but comes from a broad background in private practice.
Do you go to her with any evidence problems sometimes?
and vice versa. I think she looks to me for a little bit of the practical know-how, and I look to her for the book side of the equation.
I was particularly taken by your couple of years that you spent in D.C. at Department of Justice as an Assistant Attorney General, and your work in supervising something like 500 prosecutors. How in the world did you do that?
Well, as I'm sure you can appreciate in running a large group of lawyers, supervising lawyers is sort of a term of art, and the reality is, of course, that in dealing with the criminal division in Washington, which I served as the number 2 and later the number 1 of, has a multitude of responsibilities and tasks. And so those lawyers are divided up into sections and specialize in various areas, subject matter areas, everything from counterterrorism and counterespionage in the national security arena, to fraud, to public corruption, to narcotics trafficking, and then even sections that do some things that would seem a little bit esoteric, such as hunting Nazi war criminals and training correctional and police officers, as well as judges overseas.
I bet you found that fascinating, did you not?
It was a fascinating experience. Washington comes at you real fast, and at the high levels of the department, it is an area where it's the intersection between policy and criminal prosecution, and obviously the politics of the day.
Now, without getting into the specifics of the case, I suppose the Enron case that has just finished a while back with the conviction of Lay and Skilling was done by prosecutors that would have been under your supervision at some time.
That's right, Kent. I supervised the Enron task force during my tenure there and worked closely with those prosecutors, both in a substantive sense in reviewing and preparing to bring charges such as the charges against Ken Lay and Jeff Skilling, as well as the administrative aspects, making sure that that trial team and the other trial teams, because we've convicted over 30 individuals during the course of our Enron-related investigations, that those trial teams had the necessary resources to bring these investigations forward.
Now, I suppose it was also a different segment of your prosecuting team that was involved in the Zacharias Moussaoui case, a fellow who spent some time in Norman, I guess.
That's right. The interesting thing is, as an assistant United States attorney during my prior tenure in the U.S. Attorney's Office, I had an opportunity to work on the beginnings of the Pent Bomb investigation here in Oklahoma and worked closely with prosecutors and agents across the country who were responding to the tragic events of September 11th. When I got to Washington, I had the opportunity to work with and supervise and oversee a lot of the trial work that was done by the prosecutors who were drawn from both the Eastern District of Virginia, U.S. Attorney's Office, but also the Southern District of New York to put together that trial.
The kind of a third area that you mentioned that brings another case to mind that I just know about from reading the newspaper. This Duke Cunningham, well, I've forgotten his last name.
Randy Cunningham.
Randy Cunningham, out in California, convicted of corruption charges, taking bribes and the like. That also would have been under your general supervision, would it not?
Congressman Cunningham, the investigation against him and others related to that was worked both by the Public Integrity Section in the Criminal Division, which I oversaw, as well as the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of California. And like many of the sections of the Criminal Division, we work hand in glove with the U.S. Attorney counterparts in the field, such as the one that I now lead.
Let's focus now a little bit more on what you're doing here in the Western District. Of course, the Western District, for our viewers, is basically from I-35 west. That's a rough approximation to the borders of the state to the west. What do you do generally here? Describe your office.
Well, we have an office here in Oklahoma City. We have about 36 assistant United States attorneys. They are supported by paralegals and legal assistants, a total of around 90 employees. We serve, and I serve as the chief federal law enforcement officer for the district. I represent the United States in federal court, and I work with my law enforcement counterparts in federal, state, and local in criminal investigations, and then also, of course, defend the United States in civil litigation, as well as affirmatively represent the United States in prosecuting criminal cases and civil cases.
Do you, now that you're the boss prosecutor there in the Western District, do you actually get to handle cases yourself?
Well, certainly not as much as I did as an assistant United States attorney, but it is certainly something that as a United States attorney I've committed myself to do so. It's important that I, as an attorney and as a federal prosecutor, maintain my skills as well as I think bring my skills to bear in prosecuting cases. Of course, that necessarily competes with the other responsibilities that I have in the administrative aspects as well, and managing the office, as well as working with our law enforcement counterparts and to coordinate a lot of the activity that's going on.
I want to get us to a break, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit more about your activities and what you're doing, particularly in regard to international terrorism and its effect in Oklahoma and how you're looking out for us to try to protect us from that. We're visiting with John Richter, the new United States Attorney for the Western District of Oklahoma, and you're watching The Verdict. We'll be right back.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
Okiwani is an Indian name for a place where children play. When we obtained the camp, we found a lot of oil debris left in the woods. We saw a commercial about how the oil and natural gas industry cleans up old oil well sites. We called the OERB, and they agreed to remove tons of concrete and steel. It didn't cost us a thing. Thousands of children have left their footprints on this land. Thanks to the oil and gas industry, they will for a long time to come.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
Stuck in a rut? Move your career onto the fast track in one of the most exciting segments of the high-tech industry. The Cox Communications National Wireless Call Center for Excellence is hiring employees in Oklahoma City to specialize in wireless customer care. Management opportunities are available for people with substantial experience in the wireless industry. If you're ready to take your career to the next level, submit your resume online at www.cox.com and become a part of the Cox tradition of excellence.
Here's the pitch. Line drive on it. The Cardinals won the pennant. The Cardinals win. That's a winner. A World Series winner for the Cardinals. Oh, an unbelievable catch. Swing and a miss. Get up, baby. Get up, get up, get up, get up. Home run.
Your slice of Cardinals heaven can be found on the Cox channel all season long.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Kent Myers with John Richter, the new United States Attorney for the Western District of Oklahoma. And I guess I ought to quit calling you new, John, because you've been in there, functioning in the office since September. It's almost a year now, but new in the sense that we have not brought you to the audience of The Verdict before, and we're really pleased we could do it today. All of us hear from time to time on an almost daily basis about international terrorism. Just recently, several weeks ago, we heard about the arrests up in Canada where people were arrested with all kinds of explosive devices or fertilizer and the like they used in Oklahoma City. Tell us what you do in your office to monitor international terrorism, and do you have much activity in that regard?
Well, obviously, September 11th had brought great focus to the federal government writ large on counterterrorism and national security issues. And since that time, we've sought throughout the department to build a pretty integrated structure. If you look nationwide, before September 11th, the department had prosecuted only about 17 individuals in the entire tenure in about 4 different districts on terrorism-related cases. And since September 11th, we've prosecuted in excess of 375 people in many more jurisdictions, and essentially been far more focused in our information sharing and our information gathering to identify the threats. When you think about terrorism, you have to think of it in terms of a continuum. There's the planning and preparation all the way to the final violent act, which makes the political statement. From the department standpoint and from the United States Attorney's standpoint, we want to attack as early in that continuum as we possibly can. In other words, we want to catch the terrorists with a proverbial check in their hand rather than the bomb. And so towards that end, I've created in my office a national security unit, which is made up of prosecutors and other support staff, including an intelligence research specialist, whose sole mission is to work closely with the Joint Terrorism Task Force to preemptively look at cases that can be brought, investigations that can be initiated, where we believe we can stop any activity that might be headed in the direction or potentially could head in a direction that we later would come to regret. What that means is oftentimes we are initiating investigations essentially to bring criminal charges early, criminal charges that may not be terrorism charges, and likely, hopefully we are succeeding most when the charges we bring are not terrorism related. But we are catching people who are engaged in terrorism, in other criminal activity, whom we believe or have a reasonable basis to believe are sympathetic or contemplating terrorist related activity. I think in a district like Oklahoma, you'd find it surprising that many people, I believe, over time believe that somehow it couldn't happen here. But certainly the Murrah bombing, the fact that Zacharias Moussaoui trained in Norman, those should etch very clearly in our minds the fact that it can happen here. And it does happen here, and certainly our prosecutions across in the department since September 11th have not occurred necessarily in all the big cities, but rather they've occurred in Portland, in small towns in California, Lodi, California. It's occurred in upstate New York. Point being is that oftentimes the best place to hide, the best place to make plans is not in the big population centers, but out in the rest of America. And we're a big country, and we need as many eyes and ears to look out for threats from international terrorists as we can. And so the creation of a national security unit in my office is designed to help complement the investigators, agents in the federal, state, and local who comprise the Joint Terrorism Task Force.
I want to ask you about a different activity that you're co-chair of, the Human Trafficking and Smuggling Center. What is that? Well,
I served in that as during my tenure in Washington. Human trafficking is really one of the crises of our time. Estimates are that between 800,000 and 900,000 persons worldwide are trafficked whether it's into sexual slavery, whether it's to engage in forced involuntary servitude, or for other purposes. It is big business nationwide, accounting for millions and millions of illegally derived monies worldwide. And towards that end, during this administration, we've stood up a human trafficking and smuggling center, which is an interagency effort. The Department of Homeland Security, the Department of State, and the Department of Justice. And that center essentially serves to integrate a lot of the work that we're doing separately in each of our departments, so that we can make sure that the federal government is bringing together its resources, sharing information, and using that information as that center as a clearinghouse, if you will, for information on how we can be doing better. Because the reality is when it comes to human trafficking, we have to look at human trafficking networks and organizations broadly. It is not merely the end result of persons having arrived, say, in the Western District of Oklahoma that I could prosecute. I may be able to go after some of the people who are responsible, but in the end there is a network behind them that is well financed and that will not be taken down unless we attack at all levels, and it requires a great deal of international cooperation in order to accomplish that, so that we attack both in source countries, transit countries, as well as here domestically.
I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but I want to cover as many of these activities as we have time to. I know you've just fairly recently become involved in the gang task force. What is that?
When I got back to Oklahoma, and I had an opportunity to sit down with a lot of my law enforcement counterparts, and it became quickly apparent that one of the big challenges that we were facing was an increase in gang-related violent crime. Both is evidenced by increases in drive-by shootings, as well as a significant increase in homicide rates related to gangs. And one of my jobs as a U.S. Attorney is to essentially serve as a great facilitator. And so in the past few months, I've been working with my local, state, and federal counterparts to put together what I hope is going to be a very strong solution to our problem, which is the Oklahoma City Metropolitan Gang Task Force. It's led by my office, as well as the DA's office in Oklahoma County, the FBI, ATF, and of course the main player, the Oklahoma County Police, or Oklahoma City Police Department. But we're also supported by the county sheriff, Drug Enforcement Administration, and ICE in our efforts. At base, the Gang Task Force's goal, while ambitious, I couldn't think of a way to set the goal any lower, is the eradication of violent gang activity. And we're doing that by taking our joint intelligence, taking our joint resources and our expertise to aggressively pursue and send a message that joining a gang and participating in criminal activity does not pay.
John, it's obvious that your office is very busy, you're very busy, and we particularly, because of that, appreciate you giving us your time today to let our viewers know about you, what you're doing, and to get to meet you. We've been visiting with John Richter, the United States Attorney for the Western District of Oklahoma. Let's take a break, and we'll be right back.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
Hi, honey. You've got to check this out.
What? What are we listening to?
I had digital phone service installed today.
It sounds just like before.
I know, but it's going to save us a ton of money.
With Cox Digital Telephone, you'll save big every month. Keep your same phone number and get your favorite calling features. Just pay less.
That does sound good.
You should hear the upstairs phone.
High school sports don't stop at the spring.
One on goalie. Oh, great play!
And neither do we.
Bases loaded, bottom of the first.
Hit shot, and it's a goal. Shot up the middle. That's going to bring home the winning run.
The Cox Channel. We love high school sports.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Kent Myers. We've just been visiting with John Richter, the United States District Attorney for the Western District of Oklahoma. I will tell you folks that in my view, we have been blessed in this jurisdiction to have really wonderful human beings occupy that position. I won't attempt to list them all, but just a few would be the Honorable David Russell, Larry Patton, Bill Burkett, Robert McCampbell, are just several that come to mind right off the bat. But this district has had outstanding individuals occupy that position, and John Richter is carrying on with the same kind of great credentials, the fine service that we are used to in this district, and we are blessed to have that kind of a person, those kinds of persons occupying those positions. We're going to have next week a show that I think you're going to enjoy a lot. The very first guest we had on The Verdict some 272 shows ago was an individual by the name of John Coyle. He'll be with us to talk about the Duke University lacrosse players case that you've heard a lot about in the newspaper. We'll visit with John about that. Join us on the Verdict website, verdict.tv. Let us know what you'd like to see. For Mick Cornett, I'm Kent Myers. We'll see you next week.
The preceding program was produced by the Production Services Group at Cox Communications, exclusively for the Cox Channel.